Hi, I'm Alan Day, CEO and founder of State of Flux, and welcome to The Power of Three, a video series where we interview leading chief procurement officers and executives about three things that have influenced their careers. From books to bosses, from music to movies, we explore the three things that have shaped their success. Join us as we learn from the best of the business here on The Power of Three. Hi everyone, welcome to this latest edition of The Power of Three. I'm honoured to have Craig Fenton join us, and we were just discussing beforehand how we've actually kind of crossed paths for about 30 years but never actually connected, so I'm really excited to hear about this. And Craig is I think New Zealander of the Year, or UK New Zealander of the Year. So a huge honour to have Craig on the show this morning. So thank you, Craig.
Very welcome. Nice to join you, Alan.
Yeah. So the concept of Power of Three, Craig, is to really sort of, we use it at State of Flux to really understand, kind of three things that have gone well, three things that could be improved on. So I'm gonna kind of flip it on to you and get you to sort of talk about three roles that you've had. And I know it's been quite a varied career. So love to know three roles that stand out for you. And then equally after that, I'll be asking you about three things you'd like to be known for. So let's start with those roles, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, love the Power of Three. I'm sure, as Kiwis, we'll probably work out somewhere in this conversation that we're actually related. And
Yeah.
Not only have we crossed paths, but we're related. So three roles. Sorry, back to your question. I actually started out as a barrister, or what they would call in the UK a barrister. In New Zealand, it's a fused bar, which means you're a barrister and solicitor. But the type of law I did was court work. So I had a horse's hair wig, a black gown, and bands around the collar here. And that was a great ride. I did that for 6 years, commercial litigation mostly, but also a little bit of deal work. So that's role number one. Yeah. Role two, with an MBA in between, post coming to the UK where I am now, I went and became a management consultant with a company called Accenture. Actually, it was called Anderson Consulting at the time. And I believe we were both there at the same time. We were. Entered as a strategy consultant, ended up doing mostly big technology deals across a pretty big region, 124 countries was my region at the time that I left. And I ran the deal team there. Got to work with many businesses in many industries in many states of sort of digital distress or digital transformation or some sort of combination. And then third role is the one that I'm in at the moment, which is at Google in the UK and Ireland, where I lead strategy and operations. So it's a combination of what most traditional companies would call chief strategy officer and chief operating officer. And I do that job for Google's business in the UK and Ireland, which is actually the biggest country business for Google outside the US.
Fantastic. And what are the kind of things that made you pick those three? Because I know you've had multiple roles at Accenture and multiple roles at Google, and I'm sure probably even in your court work there were multiple roles. So what kind of stood out the most for you in terms of picking those particular ones?
Well, it's tempting, isn't it, Alan, to describe one's career as a precision authored plan, surgically executed, one step after the other. But in my case, that would be absolute nonsense. It's been more what mathematicians would call a stochastic walk, lurching from opportunity to opportunity, with luck and timing on my side to some extent, a bit of graft in between. I think if there's one thing that joins the three elements or three roles, it's a keen sense of my own passions, and what interests me. I've always made a point of only doing stuff that I find fun, interesting, surrounding myself with people that I love to work with, and when that starts to fade, moving on.
Excellent, thank you. And so, looking back, what are the kind of three things that you'd like to most be known for throughout your career, and I'm sure that passion it's got to be high up there. But yeah, I'd love to get your insights on that.
Well, I think passion's more a driver. I suppose it's important in a leadership role to impart that sense of excitement in what you're doing. But what would I like to be known for? I think probably number one would be being kind, being a kind person to be around. And I mean that in a professional context as well as a personal context. And I think that evokes a sense of caring, of genuine compassion, and having the backs of your colleagues, and a sense of fun and a little bit of hijinks that goes alongside it. So being kind would be the first thing. Second thing, authentic. What you see is what you get. There's no facade that I present. Some people like it and some people don't, but what you will always get is the real me. So being authentic, and I think that's important. It's a tremendous strain on us to sort of show up to work as somebody other than who we truly are, and I think it is not a sustainable formula. And third, I would say creative. I think we live in a world today of where change really is the only constant. I mean, and the orders of magnitude of those changes are getting bigger and more frequent at the same time. So our ability to adapt, embrace the uncertainty, sort of see around the corners, imagine a future that's different at a big scale level as well as a small scale level, and then go create it. These are things that I believe are truly important, and I'd like to think of myself as a creative, at least in the business context. I wouldn't describe myself as a creative with a capital C. I can't sing. My wife tells me I can't anyway. I can't play a musical instrument, much as I've tried. I can't draw, but I do consider myself a creative in the business sense.
You've touched on kind of that change and the constant change. Do you think, and I my time at Anderson or Accenture certainly I think helped in that. Do you think that's helped kind of set, because there's always that kind of dichotomy of being the change agent versus embracing change yourself, and I'm just wondering how you find balancing those two things, and whether that consulting background helped in there. So.
I think the consulting background does help in the sense that there's an awful lot of variety in consulting. You tend to be working with different companies on different problems, in my case in different countries, and that requires an element of adaptability. You're constantly shape-shifting, though you carry with you a toolbox that is fairly universal in unpacking a problem, understanding the data and the human dynamics around the challenge, and then shaping a solution or co-creating a solution. So I think that that profession definitely lends itself to adaptability, because it is by definition project or deal based, and that's a constant sort of merry-go-round of different things. And how do you balance being a change agent and experiencing change yourself? Well, look, I think change for all of us is never easy, and it can either be exciting or it can be debilitating. So to some extent, I think it's a matter of how you frame change and receive it. Are you exhilarated by it? Do you enjoy the variety and the challenge of it? Do you find it nice or harmful to reach a position of mastery only to find that becomes obsolete in a sort of very perishable time frame? There's a great series actually that was put out by a guy called Sam Conniff, who wrote Be More Pirate, and it's around uncertainty, and he teaches the brain science as well as the behavioural science of framing uncertainty in a positive way. So I think that's really the personal lens. I find it exciting. uncomfortably exciting, if you see what I mean, because you're constantly starting without knowing the answer.
Yeah.
And kind of figuring it out. So for those of us who like problem solving, that can be a great thing. And then as a change agent, I think it's sort of understanding that human experience of change, as we all do. And I think starting always with, as Mr. Cynic would say, the why.
Yeah.
I think to take people on a journey, you can't tell people what to think, right? Whenever we're told what to think, the mental heckles come up. We construct this sort of mental list of why not to accept that. So I think, people need to go on a journey which starts with the why. Like, why is this important? Why should we believe in it? Where is the purpose in it? And then, one step at a time. Change Management 101, a guiding coalition. Repeat the message. Repetition doesn't spoil the prayer. Always start with the why whenever you're doing it, and tell a story and paint a vision of the direction of travel.
And that's why I asked about that consulting piece, because that learning those skills of taking people with you and their thinking with you was absolutely critical, as you know. So, but I know we could talk for hours on this, and I'd love to, but let's change it up a bit, and I'll get you to think about 3 books, and I know you're widely read, and even an author yourself. So, I'd love to know your 3 books that have kind of influenced you throughout your career. So.
Not as widely read as I'd like to be, honestly. I've fallen off the wagon a bit. I like to have a book or 2 on the go, always. And I find audiobooks, because I commute on my bike to work, audiobooks are a great thing. The first book I'd mention, I was prescribed, sounds odd, doesn't it?
Yeah.
By a strategy professor at London Business School. He said, go away and read this. And it's called Man's Search for Meaning, a slightly sexist title. Man's Search for Meaning, but think of that as humankind's search for meaning. Yeah. And the author is a guy called Viktor Frankl, who is a Holocaust survivor. And he, in this most oppressive and depressing of contexts, developed a set of mental tools that got him through that. And that became itself a psychotherapy called logotherapy, which he writes about in the second half of his book. But I think fundamentally it's a book about optimism and how we frame the world around us, both the controllables and the uncontrollables. And I found it a very uplifting and thought-provoking book. Very strange book to be prescribed on a strategy course at a business school, but it's one that I remember really fondly. So that's book 1. Book 2 is Who Moved My Cheese? It's more of a pamphlet than a book, actually. It's very thin. It's by an author called Spencer Johnson, Dr. Spencer Johnson. And it talks about change through the metaphor of 2 mice who go back to the same place in the maze every day to get their cheese, and one day find the cheese is not there. And I think it's a wonderful metaphor for life and for receiving the uncertainty that we all experience, particularly in the last 3 years. Again, very thought-provoking. And then the final one I would say is Homo Deus. I'm sure you get that one a lot. Yuval Noah Harari is the author. He's written a few books, and he's got a wonderful combination of historical study, anthropological examination, and sort of futurism in the same way. And I think you learn a lot about humanity and its history if you read that book, Homo Deus. I highly recommend it.
Excellent, thanks, Craig. And so moving just from the kind of, I suppose, more work orientated back into a bit more fun, and you've mentioned fun a few times. In terms of relaxing, what movies sort of either relax you or get you going, or What kind of would you recommend or hold up there as your favourites?
I'm a bit of a binge watcher of series, actually.
Yeah,
Just finished one called Happy Valley, which was on BBC. So my wife and I generally try and pick something, and we then sort of snack on it
yeah,
every evening until it's done. Movies wise, there are three that I've seen that stand out, and when I say stand out, I think movies and any form of art need to make the comfortable feel uncomfortable
yeah,
and comfort the uncomfortable. If you see what I mean,
yeah.
well, they need to move you in some way. And the first I would recommend is The Crying Game, which is
Okay.
an incredibly moving and surprising love story really.
Yes.
And I won't give the ending away, but it's well worth watching. The Crying Game. Second is The Sixth Sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Really hard to say that one.
Yeah.
Again, one of those great stories that has many twists and turns along the way and concludes with a pretty surprising ending. And the third I'd say is Shutter Island, in a
Okay.
similar way.
Yes.
Again, a great story. I like the sort of thriller type
Yeah.
genre, and all of those surprising and moving films.
Excellent. Thank you. Um, yeah, it's interesting insights into the different genres that people go for actually. And funnily enough, although books I get a number similar, movies I haven't really. People have been quite varied in their choices. So thank you. Those are good ones. And again, going back to the work side, because as we spoke of before this, you've had a variety of almost careers. Um, uh, who are your kind of three bosses that stood out for you, and why have they stood out? Why have you picked them as three people that have shaped your career or you? Uh,
Yeah, I'm sure you get common themes in this. So the first one I'd call out is Terry Sissons, who's a Kiwi. He lives in Christchurch these days. The time I worked with him, he was in Wellington,
yeah,
and I was at a law firm called Simpson Grierson. And Terry's one of the finest barristers in the country, and also a hell of a nice guy and a very capable sports person as well, family man,
yeah,
many wonderful virtues. And Terry, I think, was the first person who I felt really believed in me in the way that came with empowerment and authority. He gave me loads of rope to hang
mm-hmm,
myself, so to speak,
yeah,
lots of breathing room, and authority probably that was surprising and beyond my years. And it's amazing how you grow, right? If you have that context of empowerment and psychological safety to be your whole self, you become better than you thought you could. And that's a great tribute to the leadership that you're
yeah,
working with, in this case, Terry. So that was in my sort of formative days as a lawyer. The second I would call out is Ronan Harris. Ronan and I came into our jobs at Google at about the same time.
mm-hmm,
Ronan, as you might detect from the name, is an Irishman, great rugby fan. So we had some very interesting visits to Lansdowne Road in Dublin, watching the Irish beat the All Blacks, in fact, but a wonderful party atmosphere. And Ronan again exhibited the traits that I
yeah,
valued so deeply in Terry, which was about creating a context of safety, of trust, and really confiding. And when you confide in somebody, you create a bond of trust that becomes really solid. I think we did some wonderful, slightly scary things over the period that we worked together. Ronan subsequently, or last year actually, we're filming this in 2023. Late 2022, Ronan moved on to Snapchat, which is another big tech platform, and so he's having a load of fun over there now. But he really did create a sense of safety and fun and empowerment as well. And the third, I would say, doing this sort of out of chronological sequence, is Mary Ellen Coe. And she was the person who, I guess, hired me at Google ultimately. She was the boss of my sort of COO function at the time. Californian, ex-McKinsey. And I remember meeting Mary Ellen in person for the first time. I was in California, actually still with Accenture on business.
Yeah.
And she said, you're over here, come over, come and sort of work at Google for the week. Even though I wasn't a Googler at that time, I was still an Accenture guy. She said, fine, no problem. Set me up in an office next door in the Mountain View campus of Google, and was so generous with her time. We had lunch together. I met the Chief Business Officer Philip Schindler, who still has that role. And she just took me around and made me feel so welcome and so embraced and so valued. And this was a person I had literally only just met. And a leader's ability to make somebody feel at ease, relaxed in their skin, and ready to go, and excited is just such a valuable trait. Mary Ellen has gone on to huge things. She's now the Chief Business Officer at YouTube globally, and is destined, no doubt, for many more great things in her life.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Craig. They're lovely insights. And in terms of, because I've been quite inspired when I did the research on you in terms of your blogs or video logs, I should say, your website, your music, your film production. So all really inspiring. But what are kind of 3 quotes that have inspired you along the journey to do such great things with your time, really?
Well, all of those things are things I do for fun, for passion, and in the case of the film and music, in my small way, to help people who have less privilege than I do. And some people make pottery and do yoga. These are the things that I do outside work for meaning and leisure. Few quotes. I actually keep a notebook of quotes. A digital notebook, of course. And 3 of my favourites are the following. First is by Peter Drucker, who's an author and thought leader. The best way to predict the future is to create it, which I think is just a wonderful and evocative and inspiring call to action.
Yes.
Right. It speaks to the fact that we are authors of our lives, not passengers. Yeah. And I think that's so true in a professional context as well as a personal context. You can design your life. You can design your business. But it's a matter of being intentional about that. The second is by the late Sir Ken Robinson, one of my absolute favourite heroes of education, actually a great policy speaker and an influencer in the education space. If you're not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with anything original. Sir Ken talked a lot about the importance of creativity and nurturing that rather than educating it out of us as we're, our youth when they're at school, and was such a fantastic speaker. If you haven't seen Sir Ken Robinson's talk about how schools kill creativity, definitely watch that. It's one of the most watched, if not the most watched TED Talk out there. And I think what he says is so right. He talks about the need to take risks, to take a step into the unknown, to risk falling flat on your face. And I think that has really important lessons in business. If you want innovation, you need to create an environment where people are comfortable to take risks, where they know that if they get something wrong, the people around them will pick them up, pat them on the back, and move forward. Hopefully, taking those golden nuggets of learnings from that failure, not kick them when they're down. Again, back to our old friend, psychological safety. And then the third, the Dalai Lama. You've got to have a quote from the Dalai Lama. When you talk, you repeat something you already know. When you listen, you generally learn something. More often than not. So, I think that's I've been doing a lot of talking on this. You're asking me questions, but when I meet people, I try to meet 2 or 3 new people each week. I try my best to listen more than I talk, and I feel richer as a result of that.
Yes, well, and I must thank you for that, because I know, as we said prior to pushing record on this, that normally with your video logs, you're doing the interviewing, so I'm honoured that I'm able to turn the tables on you today. So, and probably challenging your humility a wee bit, but I hope you don't mind me doing that. So, so I'll flip it a bit, and I know you have your own kind of music production organisation as well. So. I'm keen to hear whether your 3 music tracks include any of your. I did go and listen to a few of them, but keen to see what kind of music either gets you up out of your seat or relaxes you in the evenings.
Yeah, sure. I do have a record label. I'm intrigued what you listen to. Can you remember?
I listened to your South African lady. I'm sorry, I can't. And your rapper as well. Listen,
Quasi Court, quite an eclectic range. We started out as a grime label, which is a sort of subgenre of rap, and went into garage, drum and bass, UK funky, a bit of British soul, a bit of British reggae. Most recently, sort of indie pop. And yes, the first track I would talk about is "Rise" by Janique.
That's the one I did listen to. Yeah.
She's wonderful. So she's 17 years old. Actually, she just turned 18.
Wow. Yeah.
This week, and I spotted her on a combination of Instagram and YouTube. Thought she was doing amazing things. Got in touch with her, and then. Obviously, given her age, dealt with her parents as well as her manager at the time. She wasn't signed, so I said, "Look, let's do a single together." And she, like others that I've worked with on the label, has enormous talent first and foremost, and second, has some challenges accessing this market. It's a very difficult market to break into. Her parents are wonderful people. They have a little IT business that does IT for airports. And of course, during COVID, that became pretty difficult. So they had a period of hardship there that meant that they could no longer support her with all of the dreams and passions that she had for her music. I signed her. We worked with a wonderful global artist actually called Edan Dover, who's one part of the band called The Score. He's LA based, and we had the maddest recording session all over Zoom in the middle of lockdown, where she and her team were in a studio in Johannesburg. I was in London, and Edan was in Los Angeles. We had 5 hours together. Edan was giving her notes. She was repeating different parts, and the product is Rise, which I think is an anthemic, optimistic song that should lift your heart. So please go and listen to it about 1 million times on your favorite digital streaming platform. You'll find it on Spotify and Apple Music. So that's Rise. Do you mind me giving a little plug?
No, we're happy. In fact, we always put the links to your books that you recommend. But in this instance, we'll also we'll also put the link
Yeah,
to
link the track.
Rise.
So
Yeah.
Rise by Janique would be the first. Second thing is Midnight Train to Georgia. So I'm going right back in time by Gladys Knight, and I think it's got the most wonderful lyric in it that I find so evocative and meaningful. She sings, "I'd rather live with him in his world than live without him in mine." Isn't that a wonderful expression of love? And I'm sure we all kind of recognise that sort of relationships require an element of compromise, but you get a lot more meaning from it. I just think it's a wonderful lyric, and I love the tune as well. And
Awesome.
big sort of old soul fan. And then the final, more modern artist again is Love and Hate by Michael Kiwanuka. Michael Kiwanuka is a British artist, singer-songwriter, and I think he's just got a wonderfully unique sound. Love all of his stuff. I find it, moving and just sort of therapeutic to listen to.
Yeah.
Michael Kiwanuka,
Awesome.
Love and Hate.
Thanks, Craig. So, hopefully we've covered a few ranges there. I think for me, going back to kind of the whole concept of the power of three, and it's something that, well, actually, we started doing at Accenture days, and I've taken it into State of Flux, is that after anything we do, we always do 3 things that have gone well and 3 things that could be improved on. So I'm going to do the same to you. When you stand back and look at your career, what are the 3 things that you've done well? And then equally, once we've done that, we'll look at the 3 things that you think you could have improved on.
Okay, that's going to be a harder one to choose from. So 3 things that I've done well. I think sort of number 1 is, being true to myself.
Yeah.
So I've recognised what I'm interested in and kind of following my nose, so to speak, on that. So that'd be the first thing. Second thing is taking risks when they present themselves, and even when they don't, creating them, I guess. Quitting a pretty good job, selling everything, convincing my girlfriend at the time to move a 30-hour flight into the Northern Hemisphere away, and start again, was probably a pretty big risk, and certainly a lot of people looked at me sideways. But I think we make the greatest strides when we take the biggest risks.
Yeah.
Even if they don't come off. That's true, I believe. And then the third thing I would say is, both in hopefully personal and professional life, I've been authentic. I've shown up as myself. What you see is what you get. There's no pretense or facade. You get the real Craig, for better or for worse. So those are 3 things I think I've done well. The list of what I've done wrong is very long, so it's quite hard to narrow that down. I would say maybe the first thing is, going right back to university, coming out of school. I suppose, it's super easy to be wise in hindsight, right? But, what I was very interested in when I was growing up, it was building things.
Yes.
I had a grandfather who was a great tinkerer. He had that garden shed, that stereotypical garden shed at the bottom full of junk, and we used to make trolleys and electronic circuits and stuff like that. And I probably didn't recognize it at the time, but I think I had a real proclivity towards engineering, and I didn't recognize it, and ended up going and doing a degree in finance, a BCommerce and a law degree, LLB, BCom LLB. And so I think probably a more thoughtful version of me with the wisdom of years might make a different choice.
Interesting.
Not necessarily studying something else, but also but really understanding the breadth of different opportunities available, rather than just sort of following in the slipstream of my friend Michael, who had done his research and figured out that BCom LLB was the right way to go. Second, I would say sort of the flip side of what I said on the strengths about taking risks, not taking them early enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think many of us who have had, you know, the archipelago style of career where you've stepped from one island to the next, only have one regret is probably not is too strong a word, but one sort of insight as they look back, and that's that they didn't do it earlier.
Yes.
So if you're ever tempted, you know, to do something, do it. You know, the horizon is fantastic to gaze at, but it actually never gets closer. So if you're thinking about doing something, just go do it.
Yeah.
The third thing is probably putting myself into a founder position earlier in my career. You know, I'm now lucky to have 4 companies that I've founded myself and 9 others that I've invested in. But really, that's been a sort of an entrepreneurial rush.
Yes.
I would say in the sort of middle years of my career. I'd like to think I'm still in the middle years of my career. And had I thought more deeply about it earlier, I probably would have founded a business much earlier than I did. My record label is the first business I founded. It's about 4 years old.
Yeah.
So that'd be the third thing. So there's a theme there, right? Which is about sort of understanding where the passions and proclivities take you, and just taking the step,
Yes.
but not overthinking it.
Yeah, just do it. Although, as someone who founded businesses really early on, I'm not sure it helps the hairline much. From a roller coaster ride in some instances, but it's fun. It's brilliant.
Well,
And thinking about our audience and those people who are kind of starting the journey on their careers, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give listeners that you feel you kind of earned the right through your career?
Yeah, so the first thing, and whether you're starting your career, maybe coming out of school, or it's an inflection point post tertiary study, thinking about starting a business, or later in your career, you know, and thinking about a pivot, I think the advice transcends those intersections. The first is really to start with your why and know yourself. It can be discombobulating and bamboozling to think about the what meaning role, what company, what logo, what title, what salary, these are all what function, what university, etc. Start with the why. And the why is a deeper sense of self, which talks to your passions. And the clues there are all around you. Think about the things that you do in the weekends for fun. What excites you? What do you read about? Not because you have to, because you find it interesting, you're curious about it. What do you do in your leisure time? These are all signals. What makes you sort of lean forward, your eyes light up, and you talk a little bit faster? These are signs of a deeper passion within, and that's your why. So start with that why. Second, know that the options today on what direction to take are greater than ever. Just because the orthodoxy of perhaps your parents' generation, even some of your peers, is to do thing 1. You are the author of your own destiny, and don't hesitate to do thing 2 or thing 3 if they are more meaningful for you, which might mean instead of coming out of school and going to university, starting a business, or going and working in a non-profit, or doing an apprenticeship. Don't be drawn into the slipstream of others. You're your own captain. on your own ship. So understand that breadth and think about what makes sense to you. And I think the third thing is really picking up on that theme that we've talked about, Alan, of risk.
Yes.
The biggest risk in life, I think, is not taking them. Because it's at that point we become a passenger in the flow. So design your own life. You're the author of it. And don't be afraid to take risks. Even in a worst case scenario, it's never as bad as it seems.
I agree.
The reverse is true as well. It's never as good as it appears.
Yes. No, those are awesome pieces of advice. Thank you, Craig. It's been a real honour to talk to you this morning. Really appreciate the insights into your career. So thank you for that.
My pleasure, Alan. Nice to join you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.